All right, my friends, we are back with James Larson. He just reviewed the Klipsch 16-inch monster sub. It's the RP-1600SW. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. How are you doing, James?
I'm good. I'm good.
All right, so I want to share before we get into this. I just want people to understand that this review that you did, I think we posted it. God, it's been like 2 weeks now. So we went to Audio Advice Live, and that's why we didn't do a video sooner. And I actually got to hear this sub in a demo, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you go on the audioholics.com homepage and you scroll down a couple, you'll see that James Larson did this very exhaustive review of the 16-inch behemoth. As far as I know, this is the largest subwoofer Klipsch has made. At least I've never seen them make a subwoofer with a 16-inch driver. Am I correct, James? They don't have a bigger sub, right?
Yeah, not for home audio. I think they make like cinema subs that have 18s, but not the same thing, obviously.
Sure. So our review is there if you guys want to check it out. James goes into detail about the driver mechanics, the amplifier, shows you the insides, as you can see here. This is an awesome review. He even gives you a lot of subjective music and movie listening tests here. Like for this example, the RP-1600SW renders textured sounds with precision. So I try to just take some pull quotes from him. The RP-1600SW seamlessly balances subtlety and strength. So, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff to read here. And then if you go on the second page, he's got a whole measurement report. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about now. I want James to kind of give us a rundown of the subwoofer. So what I asked James to do was a PowerPoint presentation. And while we're going through this, I'll also talk about the live demo we did at Audio Advice 2023. And then we could give some perspective there. So James, I'm going to share the screen here, and then you can kind of just walk us through this PowerPoint, okay?
Sure. Sure. Like the title screen says, we're dealing with the Klipsch Reference Premiere RP-1600SW. It's kind of a mouthful.
So they have like 3 models, right? They have in the series.
I think they have 3 or 4. Versions. Yeah, there's a 14, maybe a 12, and a 10, I believe. So yeah, I think there's 4. Yeah. Anyways, this is a big old sub. It's just a giant slot ported sub, 800 watt, powering a basically a aluminum cone. Like they call it cerometallic, but it's kind of just like anodized aluminum. Yeah. And there's a lot of good. It's a big sub. Look at the weight, 110 pounds, right? So it's not a small one. You know, you need room for it. You know, and it
has the 800 watt amp is actually continuous rating. It's not peak. So this is 1600 watt peak. It's got some power. Yeah,
and you need that power because it's got a big old woofer, like 16-inch woofer, and it's a serious woofer too. It's no joke. And it can use all of that power.
So if anybody's wondering, the price on this is $1,800. It was on sale. If you look at the review, it was on sale for $1,439 when we posted. I don't know if anybody took advantage of it. If you guys took advantage of that sale price, give us some comments down below what you thought, and if you have it in your system right now. So, I mean, it looks clean. You know, it's got radiused edges. It's not just a square box. It does have a little aesthetic appeal to it, other than the fact that it is a giant box. And if you see it in person like I did, you would realize this is not for a lot of people's homes. It's more for dedicated spaces if you have the space for it.
Absolutely. I mean, all the subs are basically, with a few exceptions, are basically giant black boxes, right? Or, whatever size sub you have. This is a giant black box, but they try to make it palatable. And they give it, of course, the Klipsch signature aesthetic, the copper cone, the thinner copper accents. But, it looks fine for what it is, I think.
I love the color of the copper cones. In fact, in the Audio Advice demo room, they had all their speakers on display. I think it was like a 7.4.6 system, something like that. It was a pretty small room, but all the copper drivers were exposed. So when you walked in, you just get that visual effect that you either love it or you hate it. If you're a dude and you like seeing woofers, you love it. But if you're a wife, probably not so much.
Well, the good news for the wife is that the grill hides the copper pretty well. So if you just want to kind of a blank black box, you can have that with the sub. So here's a picture of the driver, not driver, and it's a big one. Obviously, it's like 16-inch, big, huge, a basket with a triple stack magnet, venting through the pull piece. It's just a big guy. I go in more technical description in the article, which you can read. But
yep.
Yeah.
The link is in the description below, guys, if you want to read this.
Very high excursion driver. I don't know the X Max. But it would be pretty, I don't think Klipsch shared that data, but it would be a very high excursion driver. It has to be for what it's trying to do.
I like the dials here.
Yeah, I thought it was a little silly, right? It kind of almost recalls like old radio dials from maybe World War II, Navy ships or something. But it's cool. They're doing something different. You might accuse them of being pretentious and kind of vintagey, right? But I think they're doing something different in a space where everybody's doing the same thing, right? The same exact thing. So I think this is cool.
Does the gain go to 11?
I don't remember. Sorry.
So if anybody owns a sub and you have the dials back there, check it and see if the gain goes to 11. I'm curious.
Yeah. So it's a very basic feature set. Is actually these it only has a low pass filter, a volume knob. What is that? A phase switch, right? So it's just the bare minimum for controls. But honestly,
so there's no app or DSP, right?
There's nothing. It's like the basic feature set, but I'm okay with that, since most of that stuff you should be doing onboard your processor anyway, or your AVR. It's subs have those, right? But the vast majority of people can and should be doing it with their AVR, not the sub itself. So I pulled the amp out, and this is a look at it. It's a big old amp. It's heavy duty. There's a picture of the inside of the enclosure. There's multiple bracing, a big old window brace to help hold the driver, to help hold the motor up, because it's just too heavy to be screwed into the front baffle, right? So they have to have additional structure just to hold the motor and to keep.
So one cool thing too, and it's in the review, but we didn't mention it so far, as that plate amp comes with a 5-year warranty.
Yeah.
That's unusual in subwoofer plate amps. Usually they're 1 year or 3 years. So that really is a testament to Klipsch designing the thing to be reliable. Otherwise, they'd have a lot of returns.
Yeah, Klipsch, I think they had problems with their old bash amps. A lot of those saw returns. I think this will be significantly better. And and if it isn't, well, you have a 5-year warranty. So I think it's a different design, different amp. So I would trust this, and the 5-year warranty speaks to Klipsch's confidence and the reliability of this amp anyway. So they know what they're doing. So now going into testing, we drag this outdoors. I do ground plane testing, which is effectively anechoic. It's anechoic testing to see the sub's response and performance. And here's the conditions we do it in. We have to have at least 100 feet from any large structure, so we don't get any echo, reverberations, or reflections contaminating the measurements. So we get a really good clean response down to below 10 hertz. So I can get accurate frequency response in any frequency stuff down to such a low frequency.
So that's a lot of effort that James Larson does. I don't really know of any other magazine that's doing this level of testing on subwoofers. In fact, that's why we have such a large database of measurements. And if you go on our patreon.com/audioholics, we put up the Excel spreadsheet that has every single subwoofer we've measured to date. And it gives Bassaholic room size ratings and all of the different compression tests and specs, you name it. So this is an invaluable service that James does for us. And James, I really appreciate you doing this and continuing this tradition for Audioholics.
Yeah. I should also add the Bassaholic spreadsheet. It's a great way to get if you want a quick way to compare all the performance points of these subs. It's worth a look. You can just at a glance, you can see how all these subs compare with all the kind of measurements we do. So yeah, it's worth looking. And here's the frequency response we measure. Really good, very flat, very neutral, down to 16, 17 hertz. And
that looks like it's been shaped. They did some work on that to get that so linear.
I'm sure. Well, most subs do get shaped.
Yeah, but this is deliberately well executed.
Well, all subs are deliberately well executed if they're executed right. They're not accidentally well executed.
I wouldn't say that, James. We've had some subs that did not look like this.
Oh no, yeah, sure. The sad thing is, though, I mean, for all this, like this beautiful, response, you put it in room and it just gets all blown to pieces in room because of the room acoustics of normal, domestic rooms. But yeah, anechoically, this is a beautiful response, beautifully flat. And there's a lot of like normally like above 200 hertz or so, or maybe 150, we'd see a lot of like rockiness if there wasn't any EQing. So yeah, there's a lot of EQ shaping going on here.
Well, the nice thing too about the sub is you would think a big 16-inch driver tends to be a big mass and a lot of inductance. You shouldn't get flat response out to 100 hertz like this. This is a well-designed, engineered system, because you get some of these big drivers and they start rolling off sharply at 80 hertz. I've seen it. I've seen heavy drivers that are not even flat to 80 hertz. So the fact that this is flat to almost 150 hertz or so, that means you could cross it over higher and have your satellites take off some of the bass load off your satellites and put it on one or two of these subs, especially if they're both located up in the front of the room.
Yeah, and it's only down by 6 dB at 200 hertz. So you could, like, you could cross over even higher if you wanted, like 100. If you had like a crazy system, you had satellite speakers with a 16-inch sub. Yeah, you could do that. But yeah, this is good. It bodes well for other performance metrics when you have a sub that can play a high frequency. This is not just for like low crossing end over higher. Yeah. It's for it helps in a lot of different ways. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. Here's the burst measurements we do, CEA 2010. This is how loud the sub can get in like a moment, but just for a moment, not continuously. And this sub does very well in this spread of frequencies. It's like, yeah, we get a lot of subs. I can't even get a passing measurement at 10 hertz because like this test is there's a distortion threshold that it has to pass for a passing measurement, and most subs can't pass that, or they just don't get loud enough to overcome the noise floor or whatever, right? But yeah, it's a powerful sub, and it gets an actual passing. I mean, it's not loud at 10 hertz, but you get a passing one. So at 12, you start getting a lot more output, but this sub is really more meant for like 16 hertz and above. So like, don't even worry about 12 hertz with this or most other subs. They're not doing much there.
Well, look, you're getting some significant output at 20 hertz and slightly below, and this sub is really meant for a large room. It gets our Bassaholic extreme rating. You get a couple of these in a room, and you're going to do some serious shaking in that room.
Dude, 2 would pound. 1 is incredible. 2 would just, it would rattle your teeth for sure. It'd be really good. It's like, good measurements. Here's so the previous slide was how the sub does in like burst tests in just a moment. This is what the sub does continuously. So like, and this is still very good. You do see a lot of, not a lot, but some compression like below 30 hertz. It does change the natural response shape where the EQ can't overcome that. So like at the top end, you see more what the sub actually acts like instead of it's equalized, or the driver and cabinet act like without equalization. But this has a lot of headroom, and crazy amounts of like bass above 30 hertz and very, very good amounts above 20 hertz. It does compress quite a bit below 20 when you start cranking up the volume. But and also the output, the dynamic range carries over all the way to the 200 hertz. So like it's good news all around, basically. Yeah.
What is this?
This is a graph of the total harmonic distortion. So like it's like so for the previous slide where you had the continuous output, this is the corresponding distortion that was measured along with those levels of output. And so the highest sweep on that sustained, that long-term curve that we saw over there, that corresponds to like the highest like level of distortion here. And so this is as much distortion as this sub can put out for long term, for just cranking it full throttle. And this is really good. What Klipsch, the performance here is very good because the sub can barely even breach 10% total harmonic distortion, even at the maximum output below, above 20 hertz. But when you start going below 16 hertz, this sub does go into a significant distortion. But like that's like maximum volume too. And what you really should be looking at is like not the absolute maximum, but like like a bit down from that was where the sub is mostly going to be behaving. And like there's hardly any distortion. It's clean as a whistle.
Yeah. And obviously with any sub, as you get lower in frequency, your distortion starts going up anyway. So.
Yeah, any sub. But this actually maintains very good performance down to like, say, you know, below 20 hertz. So that's really good. And here's the components. So that the previous slide was total harmonic distortion. These are the components of that harmonic distortion, at least the second and third. But they're always the most prominent, and all the even and odd harmonics will follow these. So like it's just good news. I mean, at nominal volumes, the dominant distortion type is second, or even order, I should say, even order harmonics. And when you start pushing it hard, the most dominant distortion will become third, and that's pretty much what you see. And we see it's just good. There's not too much of one or the other that's indicative of a problem. It's a very well balanced system that we see here. So it's not, you know, if it wasn't balanced, we'd see a lot of one or the other. But it's good on both fronts.
Pretty uniform, basically.
Yeah. And here's like a measure of the time domain, the group delay. So this you could say this is a measure of the time domain performance of this subwoofer, and really good, very very good, all the way down to like the below 30 hertz. Once you get below 20 hertz, you can see the port.
Yeah.
The port starts like adding. It's not in like it's 180 degrees out of phase with the driver, and you can see that, and that's typical. But like, while that might be a lot of like group delay at 16 hertz, it's such a low frequency you can't hear that. You know, but above that point, like in the mid range where group delay would matter, this thing is really good. It's like around 5 milliseconds, averaging 5 milliseconds, say above like 50 hertz, where it makes a difference. And this thing is really, really good in the time domain.
So it's not the best we've seen in subwoofers, obviously. I mean, you have per listen that has lower group delay, and you have a lot of sealed subs have an advantage, obviously. But like you said, above 20 hertz, this thing is pretty transparent. And usually below 20 hertz, you're dealing with, there's not a lot of music content. There's definitely not a lot of music content below 20 hertz. Some movie stuff, but at that point, it's mostly effects. So
yeah, it's explosions and stuff. And
it's debatable how bad that is, subjectively speaking. But objectively speaking, it's not the best group delay we've seen in subwoofers.
It's not the best, but it's pretty darn good. And it keeps the group delay where, like high group delay where it shouldn't be, you know? Like
yeah, it keeps it in the areas where it matters most, it's low.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually pretty good, I would say. So yeah, there's no time domain issues with the sub. The bottom line, so here's a little list of the pros and cons. Obviously, the sub has extremely wide dynamic range. It can get very loud, you know, touching 118 dB in mid-range. I mean, mid-bass frequencies. That's like, it's something to experience, really, you know. And its extension, like a lot of these big subs, they might go to like 20 hertz, 19, but this does have extension down to 16 hertz. Even a lot of larger subs don't try for that low of a frequency. Like we just said, the time domain performance and group delay is quite good. And it's not a bad looking sub for to the behemoth that it is. And as we mentioned earlier, 5-year warranty is better than average for this segment. Mm-hmm. But the cons are obviously, it's a very big and heavy sub, so you need a plan. If you're going to buy it right, you need a plan to get in your house, and don't try to lift it by yourself, right? Have a friend and make sure you're in good shape and your friend is in good shape, because it's huge, right? And it's very heavy. Also, one shortcoming, I talked about this in a review, was I think that this sub has a performance flaw. It's not huge, but I think the tuning point was a little bit low given the driver and enclosure size. I think it probably should have been tuned to like 20 hertz or so. I think they got a little bit ambitious by going to 16 hertz. And so in my testing, this wasn't a problem in listening, but in testing, I could drive it into port turbulence somewhat early when you really pushed it hard below 20 hertz. It would chuff, and audibly so. So like, it's not super well behaved down below 20 hertz, but it's not terrible, right? I think they should probably tuned it a little bit higher, but it's good. Just don't push it super hard, and you probably wouldn't even notice. Like the content that has high levels of like, you know, subsonic, you know, frequencies like stuff, it's not like it's explosions basically in movies or a few weird pieces of music, right? So nobody's going to notice or care. But if you push it hard below 20 hertz, you might hear some chuffing, but probably not. I'm guessing. In
so basically, in most cases, the chuffing problem is more prevalent when you're doing test sweeps and you're doing stuff that's really, really low frequency at the max level. But like you said, if they would have tuned it a little higher, or maybe even set a little bit of a more, do they have a limiter at all on it? There's no limiter, right? There's
of course they would. All modern subs do. Yes, there's.
Okay, so maybe the limiter just is a little lax because they were trying to get more output out of it. But
I think they were targeting 16 hertz as a frequency response, right? Like a performance target.
Yeah.
And like they got it, but they might have been better off by just engineering it to go for 20. I think that probably is a little bit ambitious for this port, but whatever. It's a good sub, and it's just a small flaw. That's not
well. Look, it's the best sub that we've seen from them so far.
Oh, right? Big time! Yeah. We reviewed a sub last year from them. It was
like a 12, I think.
It was a 12. It was a budget one, like around $500 or $600.
Yeah.
It was okay-ish. It was a little too expensive, I think, for what it was, but it frequently went on sale for much less. So that was a good deal. This one, I think is priced very well. The MSRP is pretty good for $1,800. You get a very competitive sub, and as we've seen, it can go on sale for like
$1,439. Yeah.
We just had a sale for just over $1,400, and at that price, it's really, really good. Right? You can hardly do better. Honestly, you can't. There's not much out there that competes with it at $1,400.
So people are wondering, competitors, you listed a couple. You had Monoprice, you had SVS, you had Rhythmic. The advantage with SVS is you get the app, you get some DSP function, you get, PEQ filters. You probably spend more to get this level of performance in an SVS. You're probably going to spend more than $1,800. You're going to need to get one of the larger subs from them, I'm guessing.
This would be competing against the PV4000. I mean, the PV16 Ultra, their flagship, has a 16-inch woofer too, but that is like it's basically a different class of sub. I want to say it's a step above the Klipsch, but the Klipsch actually has more mid-bass output. It's more powerful in main bass, but obviously this SVS's 16 is much more powerful in deep bass, but it's much more expensive and it's much larger and heavier than even the Klipsch sub. So it's kind of a step above.
So I think they found a good niche. I think this is a sub that's targeted for people that are setting up a dedicated theater room or listening space where they can handle a big box. It's not very sophisticated in its amp function. As you said, it's a no frills amp, but this is for someone that already has, whether it's an Anthem or a Marantz processor that already has room correction built in with PEQ function or a way to adjust and calibrate your bass level. You're not going to need all those extra features in the sub if you have a good processor to start with. So I think that's the kind of buyer that's looking at this kind of product.
Yeah, I mean, if you're putting this in, most people with dedicated home theaters are going to be having like good processors. They're probably going to use some kind of room correction anyway, and they're going to be doing all that aboard the processor, not the sub itself. So you don't really need all that extra stuff. It's nice to have in some circumstances, but most people won't really use it too much. So yeah.
And I'll tell you this, I got a chance to hear this system at Audio Advice. They had Klipsch set up a room, and there were a bunch of rooms on that floor. So I was going from room to room. Personally, I thought the demo could have been better. I think they had the subwoofer levels goosed way too high. It was unbearably bassy and somewhat boomy. I don't think whoever set up whoever did the calibration didn't do the proper EQing to flatten the bass out. I don't want to say the sub was loose or bad, like you said, because you've heard the sub, and in your review, you've actually talked about how articulate the bass is for music. So had I not seen your review and I just went by a listening demo of what I heard at Audio Advice, I would be turned off by what I heard. But the fact that you've reviewed so many subs, you've had this in your own place and you know its capabilities, then I'm going to have to conclude that the setup wasn't great at Audio Advice, because 2 rooms over, there was a Paradigm Founder series with 2 JL Audio E112s, and the bass was spectacular. It was linear, it was deep, it was flat, it was well tuned. So it just goes to show you can't always go by what you hear at demo rooms, because you don't know who's doing the setup. You don't know the room acoustics. You don't know how they're setting the bass levels to just kind of show off what the sub is capable of. But I'll tell you, visually, it was a cool looking sub. You know, seeing that kind of ceramic gold colored driver. I love it. I love seeing drivers exposed like that. And like you said, if you don't like seeing that, it has the grill and it looks, for its form function, it looks pretty good. You know, it's not like an eyesore as long as you can tuck it in a corner somewhere.
Yeah, it's it's just a good sub. I wouldn't mind having one. So yeah, I would buy one. I mean, would it be the top? It has some really strong competition, but it is strong competition in itself, right? So it's like, if you're like looking at subs in this price range, especially for the kind of function it's going for like home theater or heavy duty bass, it puts up a really good showing. And like, I would be considering it among its competition for sure. It's not one you can, especially given the performance, you can't dismiss it. It's just too good, especially when it's on that crazy sale price. It's like hard to beat, really hard to beat at that price.
Well, guys, I'll put affiliate links down below. We work with Audio Advice, so you'll see some links there. Always check back to see if it's on sale again. Hopefully, Klipsch will run another promo. James, thanks for doing all the exhaustive testing on this sub and all the products that you do for us. It's always greatly appreciated. Guys, if you like this video, please hit the thumb up, hit the subscribe. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.